Prologue. The Quiet Order.
In 1947, the Central Intelligence Agency was born not from necessity but from intent. In the basement of the Pentagon, William Wild Bill Donovan gathered the last of the OSS dossiers.
Documents were heavy with names, bank transfers, intercepted communications. He handed them to a small circle of men. These were not clerks or archivists. They were the new custodians of American dominance in a world still being redrawn. In a side office, John Foster Dulles reviewed memoranda about post-war asset protection. He was already in discreet correspondence with Swiss and Argentine bankers who had handled rye gold during the war. His younger brother Alan moved more quietly but with the same purpose. He worked to preserve the networks that had financed both sides of the war. Now those networks could be bent toward Cold War advantage. Both understood the cost of secrecy. They also knew how valuable that cost could be to someone willing to pay it. Reuven Shiloah, architect of Israel's embryonic intelligence service, understood that calculus with perfect clarity. He had in his possession receipts, literal and figurative, of the Dulles brothers' post-war arrangements. Shipping manifests tied Rockefeller-controlled oil tankers to shell companies in Lisbon. Coded telegrams linked Prescott-Bush-connected banking arms to neutral clearinghouses still moving Nazi-linked funds into the Western Hemisphere. Shiloah never raised his voice. He never put threats in writing. He let it be known through intermediaries that these records existed. They could be surfaced if the need arose. By the end of 1949, Mossad had officially been founded under direction of Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. The procurement lines Shiloah had built were already operating at capacity. In a warehouse near Jaffa's port, forklifts shifted crates onto freighters bound for European ports. Inside were signal interception consoles, jet engine components, and American-built cryptographic hardware. They were routed through Antwerp and Marseille, with the help of Jewish-American financiers and quietly sympathetic customs officers. This included setting up front companies and employing agents to facilitate the transfer of technology. Each shipment was logged in ledgers that recorded not only the goods but the corresponding favors. Introductions made, votes influenced, donations routed through third parties. These were debts to be collected later. They were often without the debtor realizing payment had come due. A proto-vault system had begun to take shape. During the 1950s, under Meir Amit's steady hand, the arrangement matured into something neither nation could untangle without damaging itself. CIA officers moved through Israeli front companies as if they were extensions of Langley. Mossad officers wandered U.S. research laboratories and aerospace facilities with CIA escorts. They collected what they needed and left behind plausible deniability. Israel's undeclared arsenal in the Negev grew beneath the protective veil of strategic ambiguity. It was defended in Washington with the same leverage Shiloah had introduced: a sudden withdrawal of donor money from a senator's re-election campaign, a journalist's quiet reassignment to a foreign desk, a packet of photocopied documents left on the right desk at the right moment. In 1956, the Suez Crisis forged this currency into steel. As British, French, and Israeli forces seized the canal, CIA operatives funneled signals intelligence to Mossad factions. They routed arms through Lisbon shells to keep Egypt at bay. The operation cemented a pact. CIA and Mossad were bound not by trust but by shared exposures, cables that could unravel either side if leaked. Inside the CIA, James Jesus Angleton became the other half of this axis. He was obsessive and taciturn, and a Zionist at his core. He was a man who treated human beings as operational devices. As CIA's counterintelligence chief, he wove his own threads. He was obsessed with Israel. He ran mole hunts. He deployed dangles like chess moves using pieces on the board that no one else could see. Among them was a young Marine named Lee Harvey Oswald. His defection to the Soviet Union and eventual return were not accidents of personal ideology, but rehearsals in placement. The file on Oswald never closed. It merely changed classification. Angleton understood that some pieces were best kept in reserve until the board demanded them. In the early 1960s, the system faced its first major test. President Kennedy's administration pushed for transparency. In 1962, he ordered the American Zionist Council to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. This would subject its operations and finances to public scrutiny. The pushback was immediate. It came not only from Mossad but also through AIPAC. They had grown from the council's infrastructure. Registration would pull the curtain back on channels of influence cultivated over a decade. Kennedy also demanded genuine U.S. inspections of the Dimona nuclear facility. He scrawled on a briefing note in his own hand, "No more ambiguity." The phrase reached Angleton and Shiloah within days. John F. Kennedy's assassination on November 22, 1963, left a void cloaked in layered secrecy. The Warren Commission, shaped by J. Edgar Hoover, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Allen Dulles, issued a 1964 report pinning the act on a lone gunman, submerging deeper truths beneath diversionary narratives and fragmented subgroups. Cold War intelligence traffic, dense with nuclear-related cables, buried evidence of broader complicity, rendering it invisible. The president who challenged the American Zionist Council's secrecy and Israel's Dimona nuclear ambiguity was gone. His questions silenced. Strategic ambiguity prevailed, its guardians shielded by oaths and obfuscation. The most sensitive compromat, amassed from these shadows, was entrusted to loyal stewards in a repository known as the Vault, with James Jesus Angleton among the few granted access, expanding its influence through America's Blue Vault and Israel's White Vault, with other nodes emerging later. By the 1970s, the Vault grew, driven by facilitators like Les Wexner and Edgar Bronfman, linked through the American Zionist Council. Their philanthropy, channeled through intricate networks, logged favors as debts, binding elites to hidden agendas. Donations to cultural and academic fronts masked leverage, each gift a thread in a web controlled by unseen hands. Angleton's experiments with early surveillance software, crude precursors to systems harvesting vast datasets, built the Vault's digital foundation, evolving from paper dossiers and coded cables to networked nodes. This archive, curated by a clandestine faction called the Obsidian Syndicate, extended beyond physical files, its reach a shadow network of control. Renamed the Directorate of Operations in 1973, the syndicate's covert arm targeted enemies and allies, domestic and foreign, its actions veiled in deniability. In the early 1980s, information became the battlefield. In a Tel Aviv safe house in Yad Eliyahu, Rafi Eitan and a CIA liaison outlined the Quiet Order, a strategy for shaping behavior over decades, not days. Surveillance served as the tool, influence the objective. Promise software, designed for US court tracking, was retooled in Tel Aviv with backdoors, enabling autonomous data collection of bank flows, legal filings, and diplomatic cables. A 1986 lawsuit alleged Department of Justice theft, hinting at a vault that fed a global operation. Robert Maxwell, wielding his publishing empire, distributed promise to ministries, banks, and intelligence services across Europe, Africa, and South America, his media fronts concealing its scope. The system archived power itself, a silent embassy cataloging wealth, secrets, and liabilities for blackmail or recruitment, its architects untouchable in a world wired for control. In 1982, Jeffrey Epstein surfaced in Madrid, recovering millions for Ana Obregon's father after the Drysdale securities fraud collapsed. His methods, bounty hunting through offshore accounts, showed a nose for hidden wealth, a skill the Vault would soon harness. By 1987, he orbited Maxwell's world, introduced by Stephen Hoffenberg and Douglas Leese, his Austrian passport bearing a false name and Saudi residence to raise no flags. Les Wexner's Victoria's Secret empire, booming in the 1980s, became a front, philanthropic donations masking funds, with Epstein gaining power of attorney by 1991. Adnan Khashoggi's $106 million Iran-Contra commissions, funneled through Maxwell's offshore shells, wove together arms deals, drug routes, and influence, cementing the clandestine operations foundation. During the 1980s, Epstein traveled multiple times between the United States, Europe, and the Middle East. While in London, Epstein met Stephen Hoffenberg. They had been introduced through Douglas Leese, a defense contractor, and John Mitchell, the former U.S. Attorney General. An anonymous source met with Epstein and Leese as early as 1981. Epstein also stated to some people at the time that he was an intelligence agent. Epstein associate Hoffenberg in 2020 alleged that Epstein was recruited in the 1980s by Leese to work for British intelligence, and that Hoffenberg introduced Epstein to Maxwell. In 1985, the Jonathan Pollard spy scandal exposed how deeply Israel had penetrated US intelligence, but high-level pressure kept the damage contained. By then, Robert Maxwell, media mogul and trusted Mossad and MI6 asset, was already working joint operations with Seagram heir Edgar Bronfman, running both the public campaign to free Soviet refuseniks and quieter intelligence-linked deals. That same period saw Ohio retailer Les Wexner building the Limited into a retail empire, a fortune that would later intersect with Maxwell's network. Robert Maxwell wielded his publishing empire and political connections to distribute promise-linked systems. The harvested data transcended tactical use, providing liabilities to map entire power structures. These files provided the foundation of manipulation and control for a network of ultra-wealthy patrons, formalized in the 1990s as the Mega Group. Its stated goal of maximum impact on American policy toward Israel, a polished facade for promise's deeper reach. This network would later morph into the Obsidian Syndicate. In 1986, Mordechai Vanunu, a technician at Dimona, photographed proof of Israel's nuclear weapons program and took it to the British press. Promise alerts flagged him weeks before publication. Maxwell's newspapers questioned his stability. Forged intelligence reports hinted at Soviet influence. By the time Mossad lured him to Rome and abducted him, the narrative was fixed. Vanunu was a compromised malcontent. In 1987, Trump's Atlantic City ventures drew a new constellation of acquaintances into his orbit. That year, by Trump's own account, he first struck up a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Jack O'Donnell, then president of the Trump Plaza Hotel, remembered how the owner cultivated financiers and operators who matched his appetite for risk, men who seemed at ease moving millions in ways as casual as tossing dice across a table. Epstein fits seamlessly into the mix, appearing in Trump's circle at a moment when the plaza thrummed with high rollers, celebrities, and political fixers, each weekend a stage where fortunes and alliances shifted. On May 17, 1989, the Lady Ghislaine sailed less as a yacht than as a stage set, hosting a celebration of Robert Maxwell's latest triumph, the joint venture with McGraw-Hill that made him master of the second largest textbook publisher in America, with Murdoch's satellite alliance waiting in the wings. Guests dutifully removed their shoes before stepping onto the plush carpets, a ritual Maxwell insisted upon, and then flowed into a theater of influence disguised as a party. Donald Trump compared vessels, John Tower hovered like an unspoken reminder of Iran-Contra, while John Lehman, Tom Bolan, Mort Janklow, and UN envoy Thomas Pickering orbited through caviar, salmon, and champagne, ferried by shoeless waiters. The Society columns described it as glamour, but to those on board it was something more, a christening of power, stitched together from publishing, politics, and media, all under Maxwell's name. By 1990, with the Cold War ending and debts mounting, Maxwell's temper frayed. His hints about documents in reserve unsettled allies, whether bluff or genuine failsafe. No one liked the uncertainty. That same year, Jeffrey Epstein surfaced around Towers Financial, a company with no real product, and books as fictional as any spy novel. Officially, his father was Seymour Epstein, a city maintenance man. In certain files, another name appeared, a physicist with military contracts and ties to intelligence research. Years earlier, Epstein had been gifted a teaching position at the Dalton School by its headmaster, Donald Barr, father of future Attorney General William Barr. Before that, the two had crossed paths at a summer program run by Dalton faculty. Whether coincidence or recruitment, it placed Epstein inside a circle that recognized and cultivated certain kinds of aptitude. Through Maxwell's introductions, Epstein moved into Geneva boardrooms and Tel Aviv offices, where he began to grow his sphere of influence and assist in financial laundering maneuvers. He handled silent transfers, demonstrated surveillance-capable software, and built offshore trusts with no discernible origin. In one of his safes lay a passport with his photograph and another man's name, its pages stamped from Riyadh to Athens. Maxwell saw it and informed the syndicate, who quickly gained interest. As Robert Maxwell's empire frayed under reckless deals and mounting debts in 1990, Ghislaine Maxwell's ascent intensified. Polished by Oxford's elite circles, she mastered the unspoken language of power, her charm a honed tool for navigating high-stakes rooms. Under the guise of humanitarian NGO work in Herzliya, she trained in covert techniques, blending empathy with extraction, intimacy with leverage, her discipline shaped by Israeli intelligence mentors. Recruited by the Obsidian Syndicate, a clandestine network steering public-facing agencies like CIA, MI6, and Mossad, she emerged as a vault curator, tasked with archiving influence and secrets. By 1990, her formal introduction to Jeffrey Epstein sparked a partnership, their mutual affinity for power weaving a web of strategic alliances.